You didn't see an email. We ended on couplet 6 last time, so that's where we're picking up.
Okay.
Goal and start. Yep.
So couplet 6 is where this set of kind of closely related species gets pulled out that are all characterized by this really quite coarse, strong sculpture, especially primarily on the mesosoma or the thorax. So the two characters that it mentions in the couplet are the punctures on the scutum, and then the mesoposternum coarsely rugose, and then the other one that it mentions is the propodium with this strong carina that's separating the lateral and the posterior surfaces. So there's a lot of species that can have either one of those characters on their own, but for this couplet, you're looking for both at the same time, which can be tricky in some cases.
Can you turn up your speaker?
Got it.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, Joel.
Did you need me to turn? Do I need to be louder?
No. It's on us.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm going to try to demonstrate or show a bee that has some of this strong sculpture. So I have my microscope working again, so I'm going to try to share my screen. If I can remember how to do it.
And I can always show things now on mine if we need to, or bounce back and forth.
Oh,
Joel,
it says,
sorry, I need to make a presenter.
Yeah, it says that I don't have permission.
Now you're good.
Now you do.
Okay. Here we go. All right. Okay. So now you should be seeing the bee, if I did that correctly. Everybody sees it?
We sure do. What do you have on deck?
This is Lasioglossum albipeni. So
Sure.
this is one of the species that will go through couplet 6, and it will go along to couplet 7. And it's one of the more common ones. There's two really common species, well, maybe three really common species in this group. There's albipeni and Cressonii, and then Oceanicum can also be quite common. And then there's a couple other ones that are much less common. But this is probably one of the big two. It's very widespread. You can find it like pretty much anywhere in the country, US or Canada.
I would say not so much in the southeast.
Yeah, you're probably right. Come to think of it.
We see it every once in a while, but it's really uncommon in the mid-Atlantic. And I think as you go further south, you're picking up a lot of things like Cressonii and Bruneri
Yes.
and what is it, Remigatus?
So it does tend to, it does occur, but it tends to be like a prairie grassland associated bee. So you find it most often in those sorts of habitats. But like anywhere there's like open grasslands, you might be able to find this bee. But here you can see, if you look at the scutum, you can see how it's kind of coarsely punctate. So I'll zoom in and try to get more focused on these punctures. And that is way too bright. So let's see if I can.
You might try and flip it. You might try and flip your microscope plate underneath to the black if it has it.
Yeah, I don't have
Okay.
that.
That's good though.
Yeah. So if you look at the size of these punctures, like if you look at enough punctures on Lasioglossum, you kind of get a sense for like what is coarse and what is fine. And when we talk about coarse and fine sculpture or punctures, what we're really referring to is the size, so like how big the punctures are, and also the depth. So how deep they are, how distinct. And you can also talk about that with just like microsculpture in general. So when we say like coarsely rugose, what we mean is that the ridges that are sort of like tangling together to make this rugose sculpture, those ridges will be very, very high with deep valleys in between them. So these coarse punctures here, they're very deep, they're very distinct. They don't blend in to the rest of the microsculpture. So you can see like up near the front of the bee, where this median line is, there is some much finer microsculpture there, kind of dulling the surface. But the punctures will still stand out really obviously. They don't blend into that at all. Where when you have fine punctures, they can sometimes, they'll be less distinct and they can blend into that background microsculpture more. So that's really what you're looking for with this coarse versus fine microsculpture and punctures. And the other thing to look for is, like if you don't have a sense yet for what is big and small punctures, you can sort of compare with other areas of the bee. So if you look at the head and you look at those punctures, you can see that they're much, much smaller and much less distinct than the punctures on the scutum. So these punctures here, they're like, I don't know, like 50% or twice as big as the punctures on the head. So you do a kind of a comparison with punctures on the bee to see, oh yeah, those are pretty big punctures on the scutum. Maybe I should go to couplet 7.
Mm-hmm. Joel, would you also say that they tend to be larger bees in the Lasioglossum Dialictus group and also have coarser, more rugose plural sides too?
Oh, they do, yes. Yes. It's not the pleura, the rugose sculpture on the pleura, that is also in the key. I haven't talked about that yet. The size is not mentioned in the key, I believe, but you are correct. Yes, it's not mentioned in the key because it's not that reliable. It's kind of hard to judge, like especially with Dialictus. There's kind of a general rule that the small species are always small, but the big species are not always big. Like you can often get runt specimens. They'll be much smaller than usual. So size is not always a reliable character in the Lasioglossum. But this group of species do tend to be on the big side. So, yep, now that you mention it, I can.
We're saying big and small. Can you give us I mean, these are matters of millimeters, right? But what are we talking about?
When I talk about big and small punctures.
Bead size.
Millimeter range for those is what, 6 millimeters for that group, and then the smaller ones. It's not a big range, right? So the smaller ones are, 4, 5, and the bigger ones 6 to 8, and then you get to the sensu stricto groups, which you can move up to 10 millimeters.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of thing that, again, if you want to have access to known specimens, and you have to look at a lot of stuff. And again, right at the beginning, when you have your 5,000 Dialictus specimens in your collection, don't just dive in and pick the first one. Just go through them a bunch of times and sort them into your groupings, and you'll get you get these flavors.
Yeah, it's not a huge difference when you actually measure the bees, but if you have like a box full of Lasioglossum, you'll be able to see like, oh, those ones are bigger than the others.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's really the small ones. The smallest ones are the ones that really stand out.
Yep. All right, so here's the Mesopisternum. This is not Albapenny anymore, because Albapenny actually has a little bit of a smoother Mesopisternum, and it can actually cause a lot of confusion because it's not quite as rugose as this, so you can occasionally miss it and like decide like, oh, that's not coarse enough, and you'll go the other way in the key. So I can show that later to show what that looks like. But this is Cressonii, which is a very, very, very coarsely sculptured bee. And so this is like kind of what the extreme end of that coarse sculpture looks like on the Mesopisternum, on the pleura. So there's very strong ridges that are kind of all tangled together to make this rugose sculpture, and they're very pronounced with very deep pits, not round punctures, but deep pits in between them. So it's like a crumpled tinfoil kind of texture.
Mm-hmm. Or a raisin.
Yeah, raisin. That's another good one. So that's what you're looking for, in addition to those big punctures. So yeah, Cressonii is the other one of the big two common species in this group, and this one tends to be more of a woodland, forest, also mountain bee. Not found so much in the prairies. So there's not you can get both of them in the same collection occasionally, but they tend not to overlap a lot. All right, now I'm going to get the Albapenny back. And I'm going to show a little bit smoother sculpture. All right, right, so this is Albapenny. Get this in focus. And here is the mesopisternum. And it's still pretty coarsely sculptured. There are no distinct punctures there. And you can see like there's all those high ridges kind of tangled together, but it's not as extreme as it is in Crestoniae. So much, they're kind of like closer together, so it gives more of a uniform appearance. So you kind of have to kind of know what you're looking for, because you could call this more rugulose. But this is when you would want to look at those other characters, like the sputum punctures and also the propodium.
You have a good shot of the propodium there.
Oh, did I? All right, maybe
Yeah, you could see the edge from the lateral edge. It was really prominent, but
all right, let's see. I can get that back.
and actually, Cressonii is a good one to show because I often use the fact that the top carina tends to be absent in the central part, and it's like little, I call them little hearts on the back, you know, that are formed because they just curve over.
Yep.
Which is distinct, I think, to Cressonii. And then it's got some interesting hair patterns on the very back side that are good. And I find that Albapenny is often got very, very white wings.
Yes.
Compared to the other groups, which is hard to see on your screen because it is so light.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if we could switch at some point to Sam's and almost do like a side by side on those two things.
Yeah.
What would you like to see?
On the two wings, like pull up an Albapenny, pull up a Cressonii, and like.
Okay,
Really
I'll work on
define-
that, and then when I have it in things, I'll let you know.
Yep. So yeah, we can talk. I think it's a good idea to talk about kind of the difference between Crestoniae and Albapenny, because those two, they can get mixed up. They're not that hard to tell apart if you know what you're looking for, but they do get mixed up. So it'd be good to kind of do a comparison between the two. But for identifying the group, this is the last really important character, this carina right here on the propodium. So you can see like this is a side view, but you can kind of see like the posterior face of the propodium also in this shot. And you can see like from the lateral part of the propodium where it goes onto the posterior face, there's this sharp edge. It's not smoothly rounded. There's a ridge here, and it starts at the bottom and it goes all the way to the top of the propodium. So the lateral surface and the posterior surface are completely separated by this sharp edge. So this is what you're looking for with that propodium character. And there are actually lots of species that are not in this group that have a propodial carina like this, but they're not going to be as coarsely sculptured. So again, you gotta look at everything.
So I'm gonna throw out there with the blind, like a good picture of the carina. I just put a link in the chat. If you go on to, we don't have this included yet on the Discover Life characters, like as an image, but if you go to some of the Lasioglossum, particularly Cressonii, and look at the pictures, and then on the species page, and actually scroll down to see the thumbnails underneath, it'll link you to more pictures, and we have some really good ones of that feature that we just haven't gotten a chance to reorganize so that they're more obvious. Just putting that out there.
All right. So I think that will just about cover couplet 6. We could, let's see, I could show the alternative states for comparison. That might be a good idea. So I'm going to get another common species. And this is Lasioglossum incompletum, which is extremely common in the West. It doesn't occur in the East, but extremely common over in my part of the world. And this one has carina on the propodium, but it looks different from what you'll see in this Cressonii albopeni group. And then also, if you look at the mesopisternum, this is a pretty good example here. The mesopisternum in incompletum is not distinctly punctate, but it's more what you'd call imbricate or maybe weakly ruvulose. There's a few kind of punctures kind of visible, but they're not really strong. But you can see this is a lot smoother than what we just looked at with Cressonii and albopeni. There's not really any high ridges or deep pits on this integument here. And then if I just twist the bee, should be able to get a good view of the propodium. So incompletum, as I said, also has this carina. And you can see it right here. This is that lateral carina on the propodium, but you can see it doesn't quite make it all the way to the top. It's broken. So there's a carina up here at the top of the propodium. Right here, there's a line you can kind of see, and there's another one over here. So there's a strong carina at the top, and that is actually a good diagnostic character for this species. And then there's another carina down here at the bottom, and it doesn't get all the way to the top. There's this smooth, rounded surface in the middle. So that is the kind of the key that, like, okay, this one does not go on to couplet 7. This is something else. All right. So those are the alternative character states.
I can show the Joel, if this is a good time for you, I can show the wing brown versus pale wing stuff.
Yeah. So let's see, what couplet is that? That would be jumping ahead a little bit. Yeah, jumping ahead a little bit to couplet 9. So, yep, but we can do that. We're
okay.
Kind of skipping over Bruneri and Oceanicum.
Right. To come back, because they are also can be super common in some places. All right, I'm going to share then. And it's thinking. All right. Can you see that, Claire?
You sure can.
Okay. So I'm not going at super, super high magnification, but what you're looking at is the wing of Cressonii. So this is more typical of most of the Dialictus group and most bees in general, which is dark. And just keep in mind that the lighting isn't like absolutely optimal, and you can look at some of this in the better picture better online. But what you're looking at is basically the veins are a darker brown, and actually if you look at the little minute hairs on in between, they're also brownish. Okay, now the contrast, if I can move this correctly, will be with albipenny, and then there's a series of other bees that also have this pale venation that there's not that many, but the, it should be a trigger like, oh, what's going on here? This is really pale. It's something that is going to be different. So if we look at this one now, so the veins here don't really show as white, but this is probably more typical, which is they're sort of a light yellow. So they're definitely not dark brown. And you can see even more, which really adds to the whiteness, let's call it, of the wings, that the little minute hairs, even at this, like lousy magnification slash videography, you can tell are a whole heck of a lot paler. They're pretty much white than the Cressonii. And so what that presents is like, oh, those wings are pale or white. And so that should be a little like, oh, pay attention, because you don't really get a bee species that has sometimes white, sometimes brown. Usually that's pretty fixed. So anyway, Joel, do you have more to talk about there?
Yep, I'll just mention that's generally true in the east, but when you get into the west, there are a lot more species that have pale wings, like albipenny does. It's a thing that you tend to see more in hot, dry habitats. Generally, the wetter and colder the habitat, the darker the bee is. So you see there's a lot of desert species with pale wings, and then there's a lot of sand species, and then there's species that are variable. So species that can live in multiple types of habitats. There are a few that can have light or dark wings.
Okay.
The same species.
I have definitely an eastern bias.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Hudson Elm is a good example.
All right.
All right.
You should have it back now.
All right, so I'm just gonna, while Sam was talking about the wings, I was setting up some abdomens, because the abdomen is another good way to tell apart albipenny and Cressonii. So I have the bees here. Let me just get it in focus and share my screen again. All right. So here's the abdomen of albipenny. And this is there's nothing really too special about it. It's fairly typical for a Dialictus abdomen. You have like these patches of like a pressed tomentum at the basal corners of T2. Then you have more on T3, kind of forming a distinct band across the whole thing. And then you have these dense fringes at the edges of the rims. See if I can turn down the lighting a bit here. Not so glaring. Okay, that looks better. So you can see like here on T3, the rim is kind of like got this dense fringe. Quit getting brighter. It's got this dense fringe of seedy on the rim. And then if I just move down, I have a Cressonii here. And you should be able to see right away that this abdomen looks a lot different from what you just saw. So you still have this suppressed tomentum in the corners of T2, but when you look at T3, there's a lot less of it. So it's kind of absent in the middle. It doesn't form a band all the way across. It's only in the corners. And then especially the rims, Cressonii has these very bare rims of T2 and T3. There's hardly any hairs there at all. So there's none of those dense fringes. There can occasionally be a couple of sparse seedy on the rim, but it's never going to be like a dense fringe like you just saw in Albapenny. So that is another good way to tell these two apart. The Cressonii with these kind of smooth, glabrous, dark rims.
You can also see in your picture a little bit of what often presents, which is on T3 on the far lateral sides. In addition to the little short oppressed hairs, are usually these very bright white, longer, slightly, what do I want to say, slightly plumose hairs that I think of as kind of a distinctive character. So, but sometimes they're missing.
Wait, which ones are you referring to? T3?
Yeah, see on your picture on the far right, you can see a few of those long hairs.
You mean the ones on the far edge? They're kind of like glowing
Yes.
in the light.
Yep, over the black dot or whatever that is.
Yeah, that's part of the text on the label. That's actually a common thing in most Dialictus, is that they'll have these longer hairs on the sides of the segments. And I didn't actually know that was diagnostic for Cressonii. I
use it as my and often a quick and dirty when I'm just glancing through things like, oh, that's a Cressonii, but from all the others, I get to that, and they're very bright white, which might be the reason they stand out as different, and maybe they're slightly more plumose or something. It certainly just keys me into doing a double check of other things, but it's something that stands out.
Yeah, Albapenny does have those, so they're right here, those longer hairs. But because it does tend to be a hairier bee in general, they blend in more with the rest of the segments. So that's probably what you're seeing. They're just more.
And you can see the paler venation now in your wings pretty well.
Oh, yep. So very clear wings, and you kind of have to look closely to see the hairs on the wings because they're white. And they won't.
I would also say that in general in the East, the Albapenny the thorax tends to be a strong blue, and in the Cressonii, it tends to be a strong brassy green.
Yes, I agree. That does tend to be the case. Yep. So probably not as reliable, but it's kind of like in the same vein as like using the size. So can work. It's kind of a general trend, but less reliable than the structural characteristics.
Yeah.
Dylan has a comment in the chat that we might want to address. The hairs must vary because the photos in the 2010 paper look hairier. In fact, the amount of hair looks very similar to the pictures of Alopenny as well in the 2010.
Of Cressonii?
I think that's what Dylan's referring to. Welcome to pop in there.
Yeah, I guess you must be talking about Cressonii looking hairier.
It sounds like maybe in the photos on the publication. I'm not looking at it, so I'm not sure.
Let's see here.
While you're looking that up, Joel, I'll just say that what Joel presented on screen is what I would call super typical. And I don't know what the picture shows, but you don't usually see an unbelievable amount of hair on Cressonii rear ends.
The hairiness does vary as well. So one thing that can happen is the hairs can get worn off. So the bee can actually look smoother than it normally is. But even if they're not worn, there is individual variation. So like some Cressonii that you look at, there'll be absolutely no punctures and no hairs at all on the rims of T2 and T3. It'll be totally smooth and bald. But other specimens will have some scattered minute punctures, and they might have some short, fine, scattered setae on those rims. So it won't be totally smooth, but it will still be much less hairy than Alopenny. But yes, there is variation.
Do you want to talk about Bruneri?
Sure. Do you have specimens?
I do.
Hand? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want me to just do the?
I do not have any
Okay.
Bruneri.
Okay, I can just go right to the hypostomal cavity. You want to talk about that, and I'll put that up. Is that good?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Page 58, figure 66. Which this is in the 2010 paper.
Yeah.
Actually, having trouble opening that PDF now, so I can't get to it. I don't know what's wrong.
I can share.
Gotta go.
Was that page 58?
In the deep south, there's another species who I always forget. It begins with R, but I want to call it Remigatus, but it's not.
Reticulatum.
Yeah.
So yes. So yeah, when you get to couplet 7, it'll be this character with the hypostomal carinae, and whether they're diverging or parallel. And that's actually pretty easy to see as long as the underside of the head is visible. If the head is kind of tucked under, it can be difficult, but as long as, if you can see it, you can see it. And it's not hard once you do, but yes, there are actually two species that have this. One of them is only southern, so it's only in the key to the eastern U.S. species. But Bruneri occurs in Canada, so that is in the newer Canada key.
So oddly, because Bruneri is one of the most common bees around here, I apparently have not put it into the synoptic collection because it's so easy to ID. So I don't have one.
Really?
Yeah. And I mean, they're all over the place, but I don't have time to pull them out.
What about reticulatum?
Yeah, I'm looking now. Yeah, I got it. So
Here,
we'll use
We find it in.
All right. Well, okay.
Yeah,
It looks
you
like
find it.
Clare. Looks like Clare has Chrysonii up.
Yeah.
So yes, okay. I should also mention Alopenii and Chrysonii are similarly hairy over most of the body. It's just those rims of T2 and T3 where the primary difference is going to be.
Starting it up, back to Alopenii.
And you can see it on T2 in this picture. You can see that broad, bald, shiny rim of T2. T3 does look hairier in this picture. This is probably a bit of a hairier specimen, but part of that is due to the angle. So there'll be all these short CD on the segment, and if you look at the abdomen when it's tilted at an angle, like it kind of is in that picture, all the CD are going to be more visible than they would if you're looking straight down. So you can't see as much of the surface underneath. So it's a little bit of a hairier specimen, but also a little bit of an optical illusion. And then, yeah, here's Alopenii. And yeah, actually, this specimen looks a little bit worn to me. So that's a little bit less hairy than usual. So I think I see what you're getting at with them looking similar. Yeah.
See if we can pull some pictures from Discover Life too. I'll
So-
look for Bruneri while you guys are talking about reticulatum.
Well, Claire does it. I have reticulatum up. And so should I go ahead and share and we can look at the hypostomal cavity?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. So.
But when it comes up,
those
check out-
plates in the key are probably not the best for comparing the rims of T2 and T3.
Yeah. Check out all the mites on this. This is very unusual in terms of on a Dialictus thing, but there they are all over. But if people can see my pointer, this is what Joel is talking about here. It's a little more disguised on the other side, but the hypostomal cavity, I think of it as the place for the tongue to rest. It's the channel. And normally it follows in a parallel lines on either side of all that weird tongue architecture. But in this case, it sweeps out. So this is a concave area, and there's a carina between whatever you want to call this, the genal area, and the edge of the carinae and the edge of the hypostomal cavity. So it's not, the cavity is still holding the tongue. This is just a, I don't know what to call it, a hollowed area. But you can very clearly see there's a difference in sculpturing, and this carina is here. And Joel, if you want to talk about the carinal differences between Bruneri and reticulatum, we can, but the orange legs of reticulatum are really a better character because sometimes the relative raisedness is tricky.
Yeah. So Bruneri and reticulatum are tricky to tell apart. And I don't actually remember off the top of my head what the characters were to do it.
So in the key, the one component of the character is that they both look like this, right? Big scoops out of the front. And that's going to separate almost all the other species in the east, except for Heterognathum, which is tiny and looks completely different. And so if you had comparative material, you can see a very strong carina here, and you looked at Bruneri from the side, you'll see that in this one, reticulatum, that this line does not project upwards. In other words, it's not like a big fence. It's a line and it's raised a little, but when you look at Bruneri, you'll see that this whole line is sitting proud of the surrounding surface. But, and I'll back off here, what really stands out when you pick up one of these bees is the red legs or the orangish legs in reticulatum. So Bruneri never has that. And we tell you what, we see thousands of them. And reticulatum, my opinion, when I see it in the south, it's coastal plain, deep sand type of material, and it's mostly lower coastal plain. Bruneri can be almost anywhere in the east, particularly south of, the Mason-Dixon line, essentially. So those are my vibes, but these orange legs are really, I think, diagnostic when splitting the two. Otherwise, it's got, it's got coarse sculpturing, and it's got the shovel shaped hypostomal cavity. And from the top, you might easily mistake it for Cressonii in terms of the look. There's differences probably in the abdominal hairs, but these are the characters here, red and scoop, that are going to tell it apart. You can see also the labral area has a reddish component, as a lot of times these do. And it's very southern, so I don't know if it might get to possibly Virginia on the coastal plain, does not get to Maryland, and may just get up to the Carolinas.
Yeah. Not too long ago, I actually was checking some specimens, and I found a specimen I called Bruneri in the collection, and decided that it was actually reticulatum. So yes, I was just checking the 2011 Eastern U.S. key, and it doesn't actually mention the red legs in that key, because Jason and me too, to some extent, we don't like to rely on color characters because a lot of times they aren't really reliable. They can vary, but in this case, it might have been a good idea to put the red legs in the key, but they're not in there in the 2011 key, but that is something you can use. There's you kind of got to look at the hypostomal carina and lateral view, otherwise to tell these apart. There's also this pro-trochanter character. And yeah, Sam mentioned that Bruneri looks like Cressonii from dorsal view, and he's totally right on that. I can't tell them apart just looking at the top. Like if you see Bruneri and Cressonii from the top, as far as I can tell, they're identical. You have to look at the underside of the head. You have to look at the hypostoma in order to identify Bruneri.
Yeah, I will mention, having seen thousands of Bruneri and Cressonii, is that there is a slight difference in the propodial triangle area. It's like one of those things that after looking at thousands of them, you get used to looking at that, but it's not something that is easy to define or articulate. You have to look at it, but be that as it may. It also would not have quite the same rear face of the propodial area. But again, you flip it over and it's pretty obvious. And after a while, you learn which ones to flip over and which ones not, to, double check your Bruneri. But almost always I do turn them over. So it is, as Joel has mentioned, not an absolute kind of thing. So it's like, I think that's Bruneri based on these vibes, but I'm going to turn it over and look for the hypostomal cavity because that's super easy.
Yep. I guess, yeah, it is possible that there are more subtle characters you can use that you can see from the top. And it's just no one has noticed them because it's much easier just to look at the hypostomal carina. All right, so those are those species. These ones with the weird hypostomal carina. And most Dialictus are going to have them parallel. And you're going to go to couplet 8 then. And that takes us to Oceanicum, which is like if Alephani and Cressoni are like the top 1 and 2 species in this group, Oceanicum is number 3. So this one is quite common, not as common, but definitely not rare. And it has a lot of kind of unique characters. It has the same kind of coarse sculpture and large punctures as the other ones, but it's also got this this carina on the propodium that not only goes straight up on the sides and gets to the top, but it actually goes all the way across the top of the propodium too. So it's like it is an agapostemon almost. It's like if you look at agapostemon, if you're doing like genus IDs, the agapostemon have this ring, this complete ring around the back of the propodium. And Oceanicum is like that too. It's less circular. It's more like up and then straight across. So it's more rectangular than a ring, but it's the same kind of complete carina over the whole back surface. And then it's also got these punctate tegula. So not to the same extent as you see in like the Gemidum group or like Lasioglossum tegulare, but definitely more punctate than usual Dialictus. So I actually don't have any Oceanicum on hand at the moment either. This is a eastern species. We don't get it out in Washington. But
I should have some. I'll also say that once you learn that propodial edge, all you have to do is glance at it from the top, and the ID sperm. But you have to spend some time looking at it. Oh, look, I have one.
Yep. I should also mention that if you are using the 2011 key to the eastern U.S. species, Lasioglossum oceanicum is called Nymphaearum in that key. So Nymphaearum is another name that when Jason was doing the 2011 revision, he decided like, oh, this other name is older. This should be the valid name for that species. But then after that was published, then he kind of figured out like, oh, wait, Nymphaearum is actually not valid for these kind of complicated nomenclatural reasons. So the valid name should actually be Oceanicum, like it was in the 2010 Canada key. So it's a bit of a unfortunate mess, but yes, Nymphaearum and Oceanicum, same thing.
Fortunately, they're not splitting them. They're just changing the names. Okay, I'll share and I'll have Oceanicum on deck here. And click on that and go to here. Okay, can people see that?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the carina. So here's the scutellum metanotum. This is the propodium. There's the abdomen. And this is the rim, between the upper surface and the rear facing surface. And there's just this really straight, flat, raised line, very prominent. And this color blue, it's not showing up well here. This color blue is pretty also indicative, not in a color sort of way, which is it's very blue. And these striations here also very prominent, but it's that line right there. You see that line, you're done. You know, there's no break like in Cressonii, and it's very tall and it's very straight.
Yep, and then can you show the tegula too?
Oh yeah. Yeah, actually, I don't even know that character because I never have to use it. But let's check it out. Get the darn thing in focus. I think I have to bend it a little.
If you're in the West, it is probably a good idea to not just look at the Propodium carina and call it done, because there are undescribed species in this group. And I don't remember off the top of my head, but they might have a similar looking Propodium.
Okay.
But not the punctate tegula. That is still going to be unique. But in the east, if you see that straight across carina there, that's going to give you Oceanicum.
Okay, it's not a great shot because I got a lot of glare going on here. Maybe I can change this a little bit. But you can see, at least in that part of it there's a bunch of pits going on. Try and change some of the lighting. What if I turn this?
This is actually a pretty good view.
Okay.
We're not in a rush here, but
Okay. So, what time is it?
we're pretty much at time, but
Okay.
we are personally not in a rush.
All right. So maybe we'll wrap up Oceanicum and
Yeah, when we're done with Oceanicum, that will pretty much cover this group of species, that kind of Cressonii group.
Yep. All right. So is this showing up well enough, the pits on the screen there?
Yeah, I can see them.
Okay.
So they're going to be less obvious, more sparse towards the outer edge of the tegula. So what you're really looking at is kind of like the middle of the tegula and the inside edge. There's going to be these distinct punctures, and most Dialictus are going to have very faint, small punctures towards like the very most anterior margin. But this species, Oceanicum, is going to have them like throughout the middle area too, and down onto the posterior edge. And they're still going to be much finer and sparser than they are in like the Tegulare, LSE, those species, but much more obvious than anything else not in that group.
So I'll point out here that you can really see this very raised. So normally there might be a sharp edge, or these striations might go to the corner, but you don't really see this kind of thing where the actual edge is raised. So, carina, like Joel said, agapostumum kind of thing. So there it's reflecting very nicely. Take a look at it. Well, it sounds like our time is up for the day. Are there questions that linger?
Not necessarily about the identifications, but our friend Kim had the question about mites on Dialictus. She's noticing more of them, wondering if washing has reduced the amount of mites that people are seeing. We even recently found higher fan covered up, but you know what, Kim, if you're still on, you should unmute and explain this better yourself.
All right,
She's
can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so ever since, I don't remember which time that Jason mentioned that maybe he would change the name of the fan because he wasn't seeing mites, I started paying attention more, and I'm finding mites quite often, but it's always on unwashed specimens. And I was just thinking I probably should start documenting it because maybe it's just certain species that are still carrying mites.
Yeah, could be. Are you talking about Dialictus group though?
Yes, Dialictus.
Cool.
I'm specifically talking about Dialictus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know which species tend to have mites the most?
No, because I haven't been documenting it. I've just been noticing it. So I'm going to try to do that.
I have noticed is kind of a funny trend. I have noticed that Lasioglossum microlipoides tends to have T1 covered in mites relatively frequently. But the funny thing is that microlipoides is one of the species that doesn't have a fan.
Oh.
So it actually has the fan secondarily lost, and that's the one that has mites all the time.
That's interesting. Well, the one yesterday I couldn't actually get an ID on because it's in a group that I haven't yet spent a lot of time on, but it was going to like Taylor. But I couldn't even see if it had an open or a complete fan because it was so covered. It was so densely covered.
Wow.
So, and that specimen I don't have in my possession. I was just looking at it briefly yesterday from someone who was visiting, and so I won't have a chance to even try to figure out what it is.
Can we say whether they're good mites or bad mites?
Me? I don't know a good mite from a bad mite.
Well, some are theoretically like, oh, we have a mite pocket on these wasps, or maybe on the sensu strictu group of Lasioglossums because we like mites, and so we want them because they're cleaning up or who knows what. And then other times it's like, no, mites are bad. They're sucking our little bee friend to death.
Well, they weren't a varroa mite, but to me, they look like typical mites that I would have seen on just a regular Lasioglossum sensu strictu. They didn't look menacing or scary. They just look like a regular phoretic mite. Maybe
a mite that you would take out to a bar.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Basically, they look friendly.
Yeah. So, Kim, tell us a little bit about your efforts to do Lasioglossum dialictus species, males and females of the tree part of the world that you live in, and where is that world?
Well, it's on pause right now because there's a bunch of other things happening, but I hope to get back to it. So working on trying to create a guide to the males of the southeast area, male Dialictus of southeast area. But like I said, it might not be able to resolve to each species. It might end up creating groups, but that's I'm attempting that. I like I said, it's on pause. So
what else could be more important, Kim? Come on.
That's a good question. Not very much. Just field season.
Well,
season starting.
I'm going to hold you out to the group as like Kim is working on guides and developing these things. Why? And Joel is too. But what about the rest of you?
That's a good question. Everyone else, come on.
Yeah, step up.
Yeah.
So these bees with the mites, these are from the southeast?
Yes, mostly I'm looking at southeast species right now. But I also have quite a bit from the East Coast and northern areas, such as South Dakota.
And how are you killing them? Are you putting them into ethyl acetate, or like why do you see all these mites? Presumably you're not washing them. And
so
you're not going into bull traps.
No, so there are a lot of the bees I'm looking at are in bull traps, but occasionally we're out collecting with nets, and I need to like I said, I need to start documenting which ones so that it can go into our database, and then we can like look and see which ones are, these are net collected ones and what species I'm actually seeing them on. I just only recently started looking when I started hearing you guys say that they didn't have, that mites weren't seen a lot. And I thought, well, I haven't seen a lot. That's true. And then I started seeing them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So it might be good for other people to also keep track of that and
That's what I
send
think.
it to Joel and Kim. Because, and I would say that we use, even when I'm collecting with a net, I'm putting them into soapy water. So I think they do, every once in a while I see like a random mite on something, and I think it's probably just loosened up from a bumblebee or an osmia or something and ended up. So it's not, I don't think bowl or water collected things are, or liquid, let's say, are probably appropriate for mite studies, but people do still do it the old way.
I see what you're saying. So yes, when we go out net collecting, we're using a cyanide kill jar.
Yeah.
So
Cyanide is
not
so
liquid.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So hard to get these days.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, that is interesting finds. I think in your region in the southeast that Microliphoides does not live there, so you must be finding something else. So
Well,
interesting to find out what it is that is also carrying these mites.
Are Microliphoides similar to Tegulaire group stuff, or I can't remember?
No. Microliphoides is kind of like its own thing. It's not part of any distinct species group.
Okay.
It's kind of its own weird oddball.
Okay. Well, you know, always something interesting. Any other questions? Any other mite observations? Who are you two?
How bees leave the mites attached? I really have no idea. Possibly, but I think it would depend a lot on how much you jostled or shook them.
Yeah, I don't even know what the you know, the parameters are when you put them into cyanide, whether you get a lot of mite drop off. You know, like, is it always the case that they're always there? Is that the perfect thing? Or is it also that there's loss of mites in those situations too? Or perhaps, you know, I have an impression that things like mites and ticks are less are more immune to things like cyanide, and they may last for a while, and so they could theoretically even be crawling around on specimens that have expired in a cyanide collection. But you know, things to look at.
Yep, that is also a good point. In theory, you could kind of suss that out by looking at photographs of live specimens in the field and seeing whether or not they have mites on them. And I have to admit, I can't recall seeing any photos of live Dialictus that had a lot of mites.
So, they're so tricky to photograph, you know. They're just so small to begin with that you look on a naturalist, there's just not many. Yeah.
They're tricky, definitely, but you should at least be able to see if there's mites or not.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the mites are, let's say you are taking a picture, and maybe we don't know this answer, so you have a very basal part where the abdomen is connecting to the thorax, and then you have, you know, the upper part of T1. Would mites just be on the face of the abdomen that's facing the thorax, very basal, or do you think that they would be more at the top of the fan, let's call it, area, or is unknown?
Well, in sensu stricto, they tend to start at the base and then spread up the more of them there are.
Mm-hmm.
So I would predict similar behavior in Dialictus.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So, for example, if you get a mite-filled bumblebee or osmia, it's almost always on the thorax, and I think they are, sucking the juices. This is I totally may not know this, but of the specimen. And so these are, if they're on the abdomen in that mite pocket area, they probably are scavengers, one would suppose. All right. Things to find out.
Hard to get
Yes,
good
Nick?
live photos of the mites. Yep, it is. But if there's a lot of them, you should be able to see if they're there or not.
Mhm.
Even if
Maybe
it's
we should
open.
invite, there's a guy named Barry. I can't remember his last name I think he's at Michigan or one of the Michigans, who was a specialist on bee mites. Maybe we should get him at some point to talk to the group, and then we can get some ID hints and things like that. And I think he's willing to ID, at least he was in the past, but I'm not sure of his status now. Okay.